today I got my first hands-on time with Deadrop, which is the first game from Midnight Society, Dr. Disrespect's new studio. This is that game where I was involved in the ARG for it, and then they announced that it was going to have NFTs and crypto and all of that nonsense. It's still a bit up in the air about how involved NFTs will be in the actual game. At the moment, they did a thing where you could buy a $50 access pass to be able to play playable builds of it and get a say on development and all stuff like that. I got given one of those for free from doing the ARG, so at least I get to play these playable builds. They've said these playable builds are going to come out every 6 weeks, and this is the very first one, so this is super early development. Not a lot of content in it so far, but more of an idea of, you know, what's the game going to look like, maybe an idea of what the game's going to feel like and stuff like that. So let's take a look. So the first thing you can do in this game is go pick up an assault rifle. So there's only one gun in this game so far. This is this kind of weapons bench that they showed off in some screenshots before with a load of futuristic guns. And we've got this assault rifle that looks a little bit, you know, a little bit reminiscent of the pulse rifle from Aliens maybe. It's got that ammo counter on the side and it's covered in that dark grey plastic. And you can shoot it and you can reload and see what the animations look like. But again, all of this is super early on, so I wouldn't be surprised if anything changed. As it stands, it feels okay to shoot. It just feels like a normal gun, to be honest. There's nothing like really visceral and amazing about it, but it's early days, so why would there be? But there's also nothing horrifically wrong with it or anything like that. Then moving into the rest of the demo, there's a couple of other areas you can explore. So there's this like little firing range corridor type bit. It looks kind of cool. Obviously, again, unfinished. You know, there's lots of very, very basic models and the stuff in the background looks a bit weird. There's these dummies that you see a little bit later as well, where you can shoot them and it shows a little bit of the damage. I was wondering if this was going to be kind of how armor might work in the game. So maybe the armor will actually shard off. That would be quite a cool look, you know, especially for a futuristic game. Maybe the idea that you've got like ceramic plates covering the enemies, and as you shoot them, you'd visibly see them breaking off rather than having a thing in Warzone where you just have that little blue icon so you know when the armor's broken. That could be kind of cool. Then there's also a button that you can press and that starts up this little firing range exercise. So you know the drill, a load of targets pop up, you can shoot them to try out the gun, see what it feels like. You've got different areas that you can hit on the targets that give you different amounts of points, I guess. And if you miss a target, then it ends. So the idea is that you can keep on going and try and build up the highest score possible. It does feel a little bit sluggish at the moment, but again, this is way before optimization, and I turned this all up to epic so it'd look as pretty as it possibly would. You've got these lovely rain effects, you've got bits of ray tracing, volumetric fog, all of that good stuff to make it look a bit nicer. It was making my machine struggle a little bit. You know, I've got a 3080 and a Ryzen 5 5600X, I think, processor, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and it was struggling a little bit, but it was still holding around, you know, 40 frames a second at the lowest with everything turned up to full. And at times it looked quite nice. It had kind of a cool look to it. This area now is the final area that we got to see in the game, and it's by far the biggest one. So this is something where you can see there's walkways across. You can't get up to those higher ones, but you can go to some of the lower ones. There's a helipad in the distance, there's some helicopters flying around at the very beginning, and then there's a couple more firing range challenges dotted around the map. So there's not a huge amount of content in this playable snapshot, but they never said there would be. This was more meant to give us an idea of kind of the direction of the game, and I think it does a really good job of that. Bearing in mind that before this came out, there wasn't really a proper screenshot or any videos or anything about the game. This is the first time we're seeing it, so we can get a decent sense of kind of what they're going for, with the knowledge that everything could change. I'm sure the controls will change, the audio will change, the graphics will change, all of that stuff. None of this is running on a server or anything like that. It's not multiplayer, so they don't have to worry about a lot of things, you know, like lag or even like player visibility and stuff. There's some super dark areas in this map, some areas that look almost pitch black. But as an idea for like the overall aesthetic of it, I think they've done a pretty good job. They've shown off a lot more than what I was expecting them to show off. But if you do have access to these snapshots, I wouldn't come in expecting a full game. I wouldn't come in expecting there to be, you know, a Battle Royale game or an extraction game ready yet. I think we're a long way off seeing multiplayer in this stuff. But if you want to wander around an environment, it looks pretty cool. Sadly, there's no way to get this if you don't already have a Founders Pass. They're really playing on the whole fear of missing out thing, where they decided to only sell 10,000 of these Founders Passes and then they've stopped it. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more ways to get involved in the future, but sadly it'll probably involve buying NFTs and stuff like that. One of the difficult things about giving my impressions of this game is that any criticisms I make of it can just be met with, well, it's super early, that'll probably change. Which is true, you know, they are giving themselves huge amounts of time, they're letting people play early so they can change things, and I would hope that there's lots of things that will change about this, but for the sake of the video, let's talk about some of the things that maybe aren't so great in this. The big one is visibility, that while there's a lot of these fancy effects look really nice, you know, all the dynamic lighting and the fog and the rain and all of that sort of stuff, the really high contrast shadows, that's not going to work very well with a multiplayer game. You know what it's like for people on Warzone where they've been complaining about rose skins for ages hiding in darkness. There's shadows in this game that are so unbelievably dark, you wouldn't ever see a player hiding in them. So I think that could be a real big problem. Plus, a lot of these visual effects, like ray tracing especially, is something where if people have the hardware to take advantage of that, it's going to give them an actual advantage because it means that you can see around corners and stuff like that using reflections. I think that's why we don't ever see ray tracing in like competitive multiplayer games. Although actually, let me know if I'm wrong about that. Maybe there are games where you can see players around corners in reflections if you've got ray tracing on. But I don't think I've seen any. I think even in Battlefield 5, I think it was, where they used a lot of ray tracing, they didn't really do that. And so I think a lot of the pretty effects in this might not make it through to the finished game. Otherwise, there's going to be a massive difference between people playing on console or people playing on maybe lower spec PCs compared to people playing on really powerful PCs, which isn't something you want. You know, you want the game to look nicer for them, but you don't want them to have a game that looks so dramatically different. It's a completely different experience playing it. Another issue to me is the movement. Like, it does feel remarkably slow and clunky, the movement. It feels a little bit like Battlefield 2042, where there is a bit of a sense of weight to it, probably more than there is in Battlefield, but it's a little bit floaty and just kind of frustrating to get anywhere. I'm hoping that they'll add some better movement in there. They'll add a lot of things, you know, where you'll be jumping and sliding around and mantling over stuff. But again, you know, this is an early build. I'm sure they'll add those movement systems and things like that eventually. It's just right now it feels like one of those clunky games, like a lot of more sort of like indie first-person shooters do. You know, you play a lot of those games and you feel a lot slower, and you interact with the environment a lot less. You know, there's a lot less mantling over stuff or sliding under stuff and things like that. It's got that feel to it right now, which makes sense because essentially it is an indie game at this point. You know, they're a very small studio and this is very early on. My last criticism is really about the environments. There was a time going way back in video gaming where Unreal Engine 3 was all of the rage, and every game seemed to have this kind of grey, brown, concrete-y, yellow handrails, industrial areas look, and everything looked kind of samey. And I'm getting that vibe from this a bit. And it might just be the area that they've chosen to use for the snapshot, but it'd be nice if there was a little bit more colour in there, a little bit more flair. I was just really hoping for something with more of a distinctive visual style. You know, you think of all of the stream stuff that Dr. Disrespect does with the Champions Club and the stadium and everything, then it's all super bright and very like innovative and creative. Whereas this area is like the blandest first-person shooter area you could possibly imagine. Now I get that, you know, they're going vaguely for that kind of Blade Runner aesthetic, but Blade Runner did have a lot of colour in it. It had some dreary imagery, but it also had a lot of, you know, bright neon signs and stuff like that to make it look a bit more interesting. So hopefully with the future snapshots we'll see some different areas and we'll start seeing a little bit more kind of creativity in the way things look. But overall, this snapshot has shown off a lot more than I was expecting, and it's got a kind of cool atmosphere for it. I'm definitely going to keep on checking this out as they release more snapshots. There's going to be a new one released every 6 weeks. I might not check out every single one, you know, if they don't make huge changes to it, but when they add new features or anything like that, I'll make sure I add a new video. So if you found this interesting, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, turn your notifications on, and I'll see you for the next one. Goodbye!